much, Lynn, and thank you, Pat, for the remarks, and thank you, all of you. It's a pleasure to join you today to honor the life and memory of our great friend, Linda Beazley. When Lynn told me about the opportunity to be here today and told me about the room you were putting together and the artifacts, many of which I understand Linda had squirreled away in the office that they found when they were moving offices, and the work she and her staff had done with the Augusta Museum of History to put together these wonderful exhibits about the rich history of elections and all the part that Linda played in this transition, I knew that I had to be here. So many of you are friends to me because Linda introduced me to you, so it is really a pleasure to be here as a part of this celebration. Just as Pat said, we all know what a special person Linda Beazley was. Her service to this county started in 1957 as soon as she graduated from high school, from that basketball team at the Academy of Richmond County. She first went to work for the sheriff's office, and that quickly led to her job in the probate judge's office. And back in those days, as Pat referenced, the probate judge was the election superintendent. So that's how she cut her teeth on election administration. And then, of course, she got that opportunity in 1973 to become the first executive director of the first board of elections. But I didn't have the chance to meet Linda until, fast forwarding, until 1996. And then at that point, she was actually winding down her job as county administrator. She had served 20 plus years, I guess, as the executive director of the Board of Elections and 3 years as your county administrator. I had left my seat in the Georgia House of Representatives and joined Lewis Massey as his Assistant Secretary of State in his new administration. And a few months into our tenure in that office, it became very clear to us that we needed a new leader in the elections office. Someone who knew election law, someone who could make decisions and manage the staff, all of the basic requisites of the office, but more than anything, we knew we needed somebody who could help us with the 159 county election staff, people all over the state of Georgia. And as we quietly started asking around, one name kept surfacing. People kept saying, you need to talk to that lady in Augusta, Linda Beazley. Call Linda Beazley. She's the person you need in charge of that office. Even when we talked to the Attorney General's office, and Dennis Dunn is here from the Attorney General's office, he'd say, oh, Linda Beazley, that's somebody you need in that office. So I think that we all started checking her out and found out that sure enough, her decades of work here in Augusta and Richmond County, her leadership of the Georgia Election Officials Association, which is an organization she helped found back in the 1980s, and she served as the first president of that organization for the first 5+ years of its existence, helped her develop a national reputation in elections. She served on the advisory board of the Federal Elections Commission. She testified before Congress about handicapped accessibility at polling places. Her peers had recognized her with the very first Francis Duncan Award for Excellence in Election Administration, which is an award that even today carries great significance in Georgia's election circles. So as Lewis Massey and I talked about it, I think he had me place the first call to Linda, and I seem to remember the call. Linda was very businesslike. She didn't know me. She didn't know why I was calling. I think she thought I was crazy. I remember her saying, you know, I'm retired now. You want me to go to Atlanta and run the state office of elections? I'm kind of retired now. And I think it took me about an hour's worth of begging. And then I think I had to have Lewis Massey do a lot of his sweet talking. And before you know it, Linda was making the weekly commute to Atlanta. She got herself an apartment, and for the next 8 years or so, every week, Linda was doing the drive on I-20 back and forth to Atlanta. Bless her heart. But what an 8-year period it was. We all found out very quickly what a charmer Linda was. For a number of years, there had been a perennial candidate in a variety of statewide races. Those of you who work in elections know kind of what I mean by this. This is one of those folks who always runs, never wins, who has his share of, shall I say, social and/or mental health issues. This particular candidate was a fellow named John, who always ended up coming into the Secretary of State's elections office. He may still be there, Secretary Kemp, probably the same guy. He always took pride in being as difficult and belligerent as he could be to the staff, trying his best to intimidate everybody around him. He was loud, obnoxious, he generally smelled bad. I mean, he had every problem under the world. He liked to use lawyer talk. He was not anything close to being a lawyer. He just liked to make people think he was. It was pretty clear that his whole goal was just to intimidate people. So the staff had warned Linda about him when the first election cycle rolled around after she took over the office. So he came in to qualify for office, and Linda was ready. He came in with his intimidation guns loaded, and needless to say, by the time he left the elections office that day, he had been placed under the Linda Beazley charm spell. That spell remained over him for the rest of the years that Linda was there. In fact, he started calling Linda Liberal Lady. I don't know if he just didn't understand Linda, but he called her Liberal Lady. He'd come in and ask for Liberal Lady. And he would refer to her every year he'd come in to see her. He liked her so much that one year he even invited her to be his date to the governor's inaugural ball. I'm not sure he had an invitation to the inaugural ball. He invited Linda, and she charmingly declined. In the same vein, during another qualifying period, a gentleman came into the Secretary of State's election office and announced he wanted to qualify for office. But the noticeable thing about this man is that he was in a hospital gown connected to an IV and had a urinal in the other hand. He had released himself for the hospital so that he would meet the deadline to qualify for office. He was sick, not in good humor, and difficult to say the least. But Linda, politely, as you know how she was, invited him into the office to have a seat. She filled out the qualifying papers for him and then dialed 911 to call an ambulance to get him back to the hospital. He did not win the election, but he made a friend for life with Linda because she treated the man with respect to the extent she could. And it became very clear to us that this was Linda's M.O. She could soothe the savage beast. No matter how wacky somebody might act, she was going to treat them kindly and with respect. In fact, I know that you have your share of your own stories just like that here in Richmond County. I'm told that just prior to the 1990 general election here, Linda was visited by the self-proclaimed prophet in a Panama hat. Some of you may remember this. I'm told the story here. The prophet was a gray-headed elderly gentleman who was a little bit stooped over, walked with a cane, came into your election office, very anxious and agitated, and commenced to explain to Linda that he had had a vision and the election needed to be called off. So Linda invited him, of course, very politely to sit down and tell her all about this vision. And so in a few minutes, Linda came out of the office and called her staff together and announced that we were calling off the election. And the prophet in the Panama hat was very delighted that the election was going to be called off, and he left the office a satisfied customer. And of course, the election was not called off, but he was never heard from again. He left a happy customer. Having been heard and his dignity intact, just as Linda knew how to do, she showed him kindness and respect, as she always did.